Stuff to talk to Mike about. He covers the Lions in a slightly different way. One of the main topics I wanted to talk to him about is kind of a broader topic that we talk about a decent amount on the show, some of these broader concepts that people lose track of. And I thought Mike had a great article talking about this. This is with dealing with Terrion Arnold, who's obviously hurt now, but he'll be coming back here. He'll be one of the returnees that hopefully we'll be talking about here, because we'll talk about the defensive back situation. But I thought it was interesting, Mike, that you brought up the Bader-Meinhof principle in dealing with sports, because we have it all the time. And for people that may not know what that is, that's basically the occurrence of something being put in our brains. Say you get a white car, and then you keep seeing white cars. Oh, I'm seeing white cars now. My grandmother, who worked for General Motors, now always talks about, oh, every car is white. I never made a white car for General Motors. She's been retired for years, but now she sees a lot of white cars. But now she's seeing a lot more because she knows of the prevalence of them. And this does apply to sports, because Mike applied it to Terrion Arnold and the fact that, okay, he's got some penalty issues. He's a guy that's drawn the ire, and this is always interesting to me that certain players draw this, because it's like we move it around, Mike. It's like we take one player, and then if they get good, we stop focusing on that player. It's like, oh, okay, we're not going to focus on him. We're now going to just pick somebody else and then focus on whatever their things are that we want to focus on, whatever they're not giving us that we would like, and it kind of shifts around. So it's kind of an unsatiated thing from a fan standpoint. But I'm curious what made you write that and kind of apply that, because I hadn't seen that really in written form very much in sports, even though it's everywhere in every market.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of occurred to me that I think that Lions fans just kind of, they take that not all of them do, some of them do this. They take the first thing that they see and they think that's what it always is. And they did it a lot with Kendall Vildor last year too. It's like he came into that game against Indianapolis and he got beat a couple times, and then everybody totally ignored that he had a totally better second half of that game, and then from then on was a lot better. I mean, he's not a Pro Bowl quarterback or cornerback or anything like that, but he's a guy that he was doing some good things for the Lions. And Terrion had a rough start. He was getting targeted a lot. He's still getting targeted a lot, but he has gone from allowing a lot of catches and allowing a lot of penalties to he's played really well. I mean, those last 3 games that he played, he only allowed 108 combined yards, and I don't remember exact catch amount, but it wasn't a lot. I think it was 8 catches in that time for 108 yards, no touchdowns, 3 games. That's pretty good on something like 18 targets. So I think people just need to stop focusing on the first thing that they see and stop judging people off the first thing that they see. Because I think, there was a lot of people who were happy that Terrion Arnold got injured, but they didn't realize that he was actually playing really well. And you think that this is a good thing for the Lions because maybe they'll trade for somebody now, or maybe somebody behind him is going to be better, but that guy's ready. He's good to go. Everything's going to be fine. He's a good player.
Well, there's a few directions I want to take this based on what you said, because I think you're exactly right. And even in that stretch, I think that was the stretch where he had the penalty that then overturned the safety from Hutchinson in that Cincinnati game, where he played very well in that game, but then everybody then went to that. But another concept that I talk about a lot on this show is the butterfly effect. People weren't really applying that properly because they said, well, they would have had a safety had he not committed the penalty. Well, had he not committed the penalty, that might have been a completed pass to Chase, because he was the first read on that play. You could see Browning's eyes go over there first. So there's that too, although people don't like to go that deep into things, but thankfully you do, and you did with the Bader-Meinhof thing. So that kind of opened the door. But that's what's interesting to me too, you talk about him being ready and him getting better. It's interesting that the timing is this way because he gets hurt. A bunch of guys that, I mean, we weren't even really on the roster, most of them, or if they were kind of on the lower side. They come in and they do a very good job against a tough Bucs team. But part of the reason they did a good job is that, you know, these units all work together. So that pass rush is getting to be very dominant. Hutchinson has returned to form. Now McNeil comes back in that game. And as a whole, they're getting a lot of pressure. Baker had that guard in his lap, basically, for McNeil's first rep. Hutchinson was constantly caving in his side. And that does help the corners not have to guard for as long, because even if you're the best corner in the league, you're Sauce Gardner, you're whoever, you're still not going to be able to stick with your guy for 10 seconds, most likely, once he starts kind of going out into whatever extra pattern he does after his prescribed pattern. So it's interesting. I haven't heard a lot about Arnold not being there and then them putting it on the new guys, but I'll be curious to see, like, when Arnold comes back, if he does have one of these plays like you talked about, they're going to go, well, hey, these no-name guys like Millette and Whiteside were doing better than Arnold, even though it's not really the same sample size or situation.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to happen. And you mentioned that safety, and people need to go back and watch what happened on the very next two plays of that same drive. He bats down a pass to Jamar Chase and then bats down another pass to T. Higgins. Like, the very next two plays after that. And the Bengals punt, and the fact that they didn't get a safety goes into the void. Nobody cares about it anymore. The Lions won that game. Like, it's not a big deal, but I think people harp a little bit too much on some of the negative things. And, you know, I think it's just something we all kind of do. But yeah, no, I definitely think that there will be situations where as soon as he gets beat once, which every corner is going to get beat. There is no corner out there, even Darrelle Revis on Revis Island, that guy got beat all the time, just like every corner does. It happens. You cannot be perfect. And as soon as he gets beat, somebody's going to say bench him for Whiteside. And look, I think Nick Whiteside's a great cornerback, and he's going to be awesome for this team as a depth guy, rotational guy in the future. But he's not as good as Terrion Arnold. He just isn't.
That's the big thing that we learned in this game, I think. Like you said, you don't want to take it too far, but you do want to give credit to these guys that did fill in. And I was big on Whiteside in camp. I thought he was looking very good. I was surprised to see that he missed. I thought that he might sneak his way on there with his great play during camp, but I was glad he got his shot. I thought he did well with that. But the guy that you brought up before, I think, is a perfect example of this, because we talk about Kindle Vildor the last 2 years. The first year we got to him pretty quickly because he wasn't as low on the depth chart. And then the second year, then it was, okay, now he's like fifth or sixth corner on the depth chart, but we still ended up getting to him, and he ended up being the number 2 corner. And I would always tell people when they would vilify him, I would say, well, but Kindle Vildor is your 5th or 6th corner, not your 2nd corner. Like, he wasn't meant to necessarily take these reps, but he's not doing a bad job with them. And that's what we're seeing with some of these depth guys. So it's great that Whiteside and Millette and Hallett and some of these other guys that filled in the defensive backfield showed that they were competent there. And then hopefully you do layer back in Reed and Arnold and all the other guys, and with a complete complement, you're really able to wreak havoc between a defensive line that's caving things in, a linebacking core that is playing great. They just are stuck between the two levels, and then a defensive backfield that can really create some turnovers, especially once you get the safeties back.
Yeah, it's, you know, I don't think a lot of Lions fans realize how good this defense is. They're number 1 in defensive DVOA right now. They have over 150 pressures. They had 40 pressures against Tampa Bay. 40 pressures in that game. That's insane. They're third in sacks. At least they were going before the bye week. That might be a little bit lower. I haven't quite checked that yet. But this is a really, really good defense, and I think they have the best linebacker core in the league. I think this defensive line, if they get Davenport back healthy and Josh Pascal whenever that's going to happen, and then maybe, you know, if they get somebody in the trade at the trade deadline, maybe like an Arden Key or Jalen Phillips or something like that, I think they could just be unstoppable.
That's what I want to talk about next here, Mike, because you do a lot of kind of analysis of the trade market and the different people out there being available to the Lions. I want to see if you have your eye on anybody, and I want to talk about that from both the corner and the end perspective. I think corner's kind of been fixed, but it's been interesting how they've addressed that, and I want to see how you think they'll potentially address the line situation. But we'll come back with Mike Payton of A to Z Sports. Stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Mike Payton of A to Z Sports. I wanted to finish up the kind of transition from cornerback to defensive line, because one of the things that I actually saw from your feed, Mike, the news today, that Kendall Fuller had been released from the practice squad. This is something I marvel at with the Lions, because I think I understand better than most about how teams are looking for somebody that want the fit to the team. I think I understand that from a team culture standpoint, and I've always pointed this out, I think primarily in basketball, because it's easier to see, where you have a guy that might be a great scorer, he might put up a lot of numbers, but he's not necessarily contributing to winning the way that you want. That's harder to see with football, but I'm sure the coaches can see that through practices and how the guys interact with each other in the locker room. But it's always interesting to me when we get these guys. I thought Fuller was a good signing. People were looking for specific guys. Gilmore got brought up a lot. There were certain cornerbacks that were on the market that you always, as a fan, go, okay, here's the top guy on the market. Let's have my team get him. He'll be able to help with the situation. I thought Fuller was legitimately one of those guys. He might not have been in the same breath as some of those other guys with some of the fans, but I thought he could have been a good fit. He's got the press coverage experience. He was very good a couple years ago and was one of the top-rated corners on PFF, by PFF, and all of that kind of stuff. But he didn't even he didn't even make it into the mix. All these guys that were names that we hadn't heard of, they found a bunch of these other names, and they made it work with these guys. But I'm curious what you make of that as a concept, and if you think they make any more changes with corner, and then we'll move to what you think on the defensive line here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one big concern with Fuller was that before he signed with the Lions, he had actually tried out with a few other teams, and nobody had signed him. So I think, you hate to see it, but I think maybe this might be a situation where he just kind of lost to father time, and he just might not be that player anymore. And, when they brought him in, Dan Campbell immediately was kind of like, well, he's here, let's see what he's got for a few days and see. We'll see where things go. It didn't sound very promising at any point. So I think it's just one of those things where they brought him in and he just wasn't the guy that he used to be.
That makes sense. I saw somebody post to you that it was a Zach Ertz level time with the team, but then Ertz still caught on somewhere, which I found interesting. But yeah, they've made it work with these defensive backs. So I think the talk of trading for Tariq Woolen or picking up one of these guys that's a bigger name is probably done with. But we've been talking about defensive end and the edge and the defensive line, it's seemingly forever, ever since Hutchinson went down. And even though he's come back, we still talk about it. They've made some of the same types of changes that we talked about. They picked up Lacey. They wanted to stick with Davenport. Obviously, he got hurt, which everybody kind of went, well, that's what we thought was going to happen. That's been the trend with the last few years. But Muhammad was one of these practice squad guys that they picked up, and I mean, older than you'd think. You kind of think that guy's younger, but he's in his 30s, and they've now found kind of second life for him. He's playing well in a rotational role for them, but I'm curious if you think they're going to go after some of these guys, because I think the difference, at least from my assessment, Mike, this year between the edge market this year and the edge market last year is that some of these guys are more gettable as far as the price works for a lot of these guys. Even if you wanted to take a swing, if you got them at the right time, the price may work. But the edge market seems like there might be some guys that are available that they may be interested in that wouldn't be a price tag that they would shirk at.
Yeah, I think there's a few guys, and I kind of mentioned them already. I think Jalen Phillips of the Dolphins, I think that's the best route that the Lions could go. they could probably get him for a fourth, maybe even a fifth. This is a guy that was the 18th pick in the draft a few years ago. It was looking really good. I mean, living up to the hype and everything, but then had a couple of injuries. But the season he's back, he gets pressure, man. He gets a ton of pressure on that Dolphins defense that's not very good despite their big win on Sunday over the Falcons, which the team that nobody can seem to figure out. But I think that the Lions got an opportunity to get him on the cheaper end, both contractually and draft asset-wise. And then this is somebody that is only 26 years old. You can grow with this guy, and you don't have to pay him an insane contract. I think that what I said was probably like a 4-year, $80 million type thing, which is, you know, midway through the top salaries as an edge. And it's a big discount for a guy that can be a big time player. I think that's the way to go personally. But I think the more realistic one is probably Arden Key from the Titans, the veteran player in his 30s. Not really going to start at edge here, but could be a really solid rotational guy. He's not the guy that he was a couple of years ago or even last year, but he's still able to get pressure. He's still able to get home. I think you pair him up with Al-Quadin Muhammad, and you got Aiden on the other side, and that's a pretty good group. They just need somebody who can more accurately take advantage of these one-on-ones that Aleem and Aiden and DJ Reader are getting for them. And Muhammad has done that, and I just think that one more guy could, maybe a younger guy, faster guy, could do it a little bit better. I still think Muhammad's a great player.
He'll still factor in the rotation no matter what we do here and what the trade deadline brings us. But I think the big thing with the edge, because I always look at this, I Googled it as soon as you mentioned those two names because I couldn't remember with Phillips. I had a good idea with Key, but I think one of the main things with edge where it's kind of a little bit of cognitive dissonance between what the fans kind of want and what the Lions want. The Lions want somebody that can both stop the run and create that pass rush, and they want somebody that's typically on the heavier side. And so I looked it up with Phillips. I see he's currently listed at 263, which is kind of like at the low end of what they typically like. But he's also, I mean, as far as I think his build is hyper athletic, so he doesn't really have a lot of extra. I'm sure you could add to that build if you wanted to. Not that you would necessarily want to because you diminish that speed. But I think that's the disconnect with some people where you don't necessarily, you do need that speed guy, but it's how do you do that? How do you scheme them in, especially now with Derek Barnes back in the mix, and where do they fit in that rotation? Are they happy with hopefully getting Davenport back, having Lacey for the earlier downs, and then we're letting Muhammad and somebody like Phillips or Key loose after that for the more pass rush oriented situations?
Right. Yeah, they're definitely not looking for another James Houston who, you know, great pass rusher, but could do literally nothing else. And I think Dallas sees that too. They pretty much just put him in pass rush sets, and that's about it. But yeah, I also think that there's a very strong possibility that they do nothing at the trade deadline and just sit still with what they have, and that'll be that. I don't think that there's anybody on this team that they're willing to trade away necessarily, and I don't think that there's anybody that, you know, unless a good deal comes along, I don't think there's anybody that they feel they need to have. Especially, they're not going to go after any of these big names. And I know Lions fans want it so bad, but Trey Hendrickson's not going to happen. Max Crosby is definitely not going to happen. And it's just, you know, none of these big guys with huge contracts that can affect how they want to re-sign all those guys from 2023. And you know, eventually they're going to want to get Terry and Arnold under a new deal too. So you just don't want to pack the coffers with all this money that you can't maneuver around.
You and some of the other folks on the Lions beat have done a good job of outlining this concept because, yeah, it's a fixed budget with this team, and it's great that a lot of these guys have hit. It's great that they've got a lot of guys that are key to their culture that they want to keep long term. You know, the Sewells, the McNeils. They want to add Hutchinson to the mix. They added J-Mo. They got St. Brown. They're locking guys in, but eventually something's got to give there, especially if you want to get aggressive with these other players. So that if you're getting somebody here, like you said, Mike, it's likely going to be a rental type situation because they're not going to add somebody that's going to throw off their cap situation and put them in a spot where they got to decide between re-signing whoever that is that they acquired, say a Jalen Phillips, even if he's at a decent marker there money-wise, compared to some of the other guys that they have to re-sign on the team, which that list is getting kind of long here.
Yeah, and I think that's why Key makes the most amount of sense if they were going to make a deal. It's just he's so cheap. I mean, Titans have already footed half the bill on that. He only has 1 year on his deal. That they would have to probably pay maybe a little over $1 million, maybe even a little under $1 million for him for the rest of the year. It's just a no-brainer. I would be kind of shocked if they didn't at least make a phone call to the Titans. But yeah, I don't see anything big happening. And I know Lions fans hate that, but this is a really good team. They don't need to go out and do that. They definitely do not need to disrupt their ideals and their future to have a hot shot move right now.
I think that's one of the better points. We've made a lot of great points during the interview, but that's a great point there because I know people are saying, well, hey, that things are wide open. Let's take a swing. But there's another side to that, which is things are in pretty good shape for them to make a run. Why upset the apple cart here? Why add somebody in that's going to potentially change the team chemistry, even towards the negative? It could. You've got a good rotation. You've got a team that could charge towards the Super Bowl right now, especially with a kind of wide open, especially NFC. You've got Philadelphia on top, but they're a bit of a house of cards with their culture. You've got the Packers, who have obviously played well in the division, but you're not necessarily looking at them as a team you can't beat. It's a winnable NFC, and then you're one game in the Super Bowl against whoever it is, Kansas City or whatever, on the AFC side. So I think it does make sense to kind of hold as much as you can, hold on to that culture and see how far it gets you. But it'll be interesting to see if they do. I could see it being a low value, like you said, Mike, something that they're giving up a day 3 pick for a guy that they think they can add to the rotation, not necessarily supplant anybody, just supplement somebody.
Yeah, and the other thing is you got to know that the Lions are just not going to be that team that goes all in to win one Super Bowl this year. They want to win multiple Super Bowls. They want to be, for lack of a better idea, the New England Patriots of the Tom Brady age, where they just kept going back. That's what the Lions want to be. They don't want to be just a one-time thing. And I know everybody wants that first Super Bowl, but man, I would like more than one, wouldn't you? Like, I think more than one would be way cooler.
Well, they're building to that, I think. Like you said, they've got the culture, they've got the long-term arc, and like you said, they don't necessarily need to try to blow out the budget to get the one. They've got their team, the median age is well positioned. They've got coaches in place, they've got management in place. Everybody's in lockstep. So yeah, I mean, you want to build a contender for years to come, and I think they've clearly shown that they've done that for the last couple of years, and it's looking good for the future. So I appreciate the discussion. A little bit of a counter discussion to what the fans, like you said, what some of the fans probably want, but there's different avenues out there, and we'll see what ends up happening. But they've got a good shot. Their chances are among the best to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl here in the league, as some of these other teams kind of drop out. But we appreciate you joining us, Mike, and tell the people where they can follow you here in the meantime.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff at A to Z Sports under A2ZSports.com/Detroit. We have videos on TikTok and Instagram at A to Z Sports Detroit. YouTube, we're all over the place. Come by, drop us a follow, argue with me if you want to. I'm down for that too, but we'll see you.
Sports Intel with Ron Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro FM.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.